104.5 The Team, your home for New York Jets football. Ryan Fitzpatrick officially back with the Jets. The first man he spoke to, New York Daily News' Manish Mehta. Manish, what did you take away from that first conversation with Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Well, he's certainly relieved to get all of this over and done with, even though it took 6 months. What I thought was interesting was that it was particularly painstaking for him because he did live about 10 minutes away from the facility, and he would talk to his teammates after OTA practices and the off-season program, but he was never obviously permitted to go into the building because he didn't have a contract. But he told me it felt like the first day of school last night when he came in to sign his contract just as a team meeting was beginning. And, he's ready to get to work. Obviously, a lot has happened since we last saw him in Buffalo, but he believes that his best football is yet to come, and he clearly gives the Jets the best opportunity to break that 5-year playoff drought.
Manish, of course, I follow you on Twitter like everyone should, at Mehta, NYDN. And I saw the quote that he said he wouldn't wish this on anyone. Seems a little melodramatic for somebody who just made $12 to $15 million.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice headline. I think if you read the entire quote, he has a pretty firm handle on reality, I think. But within the context of a football player holding out for a contract, I think that's kind of what he meant. He's a pretty well-grounded guy. If you've been around him, he understands the business of football. And it was funny because I asked him how long he was prepared to sit out, and he said it's probably a question that I should ask his wife because his wife was giving him the evil eye, probably thinking along the same lines as you guys, which is, hey, you're going to get a pretty good amount of money whether it's what you want or not. But ultimately, look, I think that the Jets settled on what he wanted a couple months ago because they knew that he gives them the best opportunity to make the postseason, and there wasn't really a strong belief in Geno Smith, regardless of what anybody said publicly. And I think that's why this deal got done when it got done for the 1 year, $12 million, which is something he was amenable to months ago. I think all of this really just speaks to the inexperience that Mike McCagnon has as a general manager. I think he'll learn from this. You saw a very similar pattern with Mo Wilkerson, where they took a hard-line stance and then in the 11th hour gave him a long-term deal. But ultimately, look, I think it's a fair deal for both sides. Maybe not exactly what each side, but clearly what they both needed.
So we should thank Mrs. Fitzpatrick for finally getting this done.
Well, you know what? I think it was up to Mrs. Fitzpatrick. This probably would have gotten done many, many months ago when the Jets offered their first. But he's a pretty savvy guy. And his agent, Jimmy Sexton, has been around the block for the better part of, 30-some-odd years.
Yeah.
Negotiated some pretty high-octane deals. So they knew what they were doing. I probably wouldn't have gone this deep into it and taken whatever was offered me, but they made the smart move, obviously.
Manish, when you look at, we were doing the show yesterday, and Nick Foles became a free agent. We knew the Jets were interested in him. Did Foles' availability have anything to do with getting this done?
No, I don't think so. The Jets actually bumped up their 1 year offer from $9 million to $12 million earlier in the day. They finally gave Fitzpatrick a hard deadline, which is something I thought that they should have instituted a while back. But they gave him that 7 o'clock deadline, which coincided with the start of that team meeting, and he smartly took it. I don't think that Nick Foles was ever really a part of the equation because if you looked at this logically, the Jets did give Fitzpatrick and his camp a firm deadline yesterday, but realistically, I think they would have been okay if he had not been signed for a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks. You certainly didn't want this to get past that second preseason game. That was, to me, the critical point. And if you look at it through that lens, if they did finally close the door on Fitzpatrick a week and a half or so from now, and then brought in a veteran like Nick Foles, at that point, Nick Foles would be learning a completely new system and new teammates, and he would clearly be the backup to Geno Smith for at least the start of the season. But again, I don't think the Jets are really serious about Foles, and I certainly know that wasn't any kind of real concern for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
So, Manish, when is he reporting to camp? Will he be there today? What's the time schedule?
Yeah, he's going to be there today. He had a physical this morning. When I spoke to him this morning, he was on his way to that. And it's interesting because I asked him if he was in shape and how he really kept in shape this offseason. And he has 5 kids, as everyone knows. So running around and chasing them around is one thing. He also threw around a football with his brother Sean, who was a former tight end at Northern Arizona. But it's a lot different than throwing it around to NFL receivers like Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall. So he says it's like riding a bike. He's not going to tiptoe his way into this thing. He wants to get in with the kind of where he left off last year and see how it goes. But I suspect that Todd Bowles is going to be smart about this. The last thing you need is for Ryan Fitzpatrick to get some kind of early training camp nagging injury because he's trying to go too hard, too fast out of the gate. I think they'll ease him back in, but I would fully suspect that he would be the starter for the first preseason game. Let's put it that way.
Manish Mehta of the New York Daily News. He also a contributor panelist on ESPN's The Sports Reporters, covers the Jets for just about everybody. When we look at this new situation, what's going to happen with the quarterbacks? There's now 4 guys. Are they going to carry 4? If not, who's out?
Well, it's interesting because after they drafted Christian Hackenberg, I always suspected and believed that Fitzpatrick would be back. So I asked around in the organization, in the building, about carrying 4 quarterbacks, and there had been talk back at this offseason after the draft to really adopt what the Patriots adopted, which was a 4-quarterback model in Tom Brady's rookie season. And, of course, at that point, Brady was a 6th-round pick. They didn't know what they had in him, but they didn't want to cut him and expose him to waivers. So they kept 4 quarterbacks. And it was a little bit different situation because they weren't expected to contend for a playoff spot that first year, which was also Bill Belichick's first year. But I would not rule out the possibility that all 4 of these guys, Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Christian Hackenberg, and Bryce Petty, were all on the roster this season. I think they feel comfortable with that idea. Ultimately, I think it'll be determined by how Bryce Petty plays. And if he shows enough improvement or gradual progress, I think they'll keep him aboard. They're clearly not getting rid of Hackenberg. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is clearly the starter. Geno Smith has the most experience to be the backup. So those 3 guys aren't going to go anywhere. The guy who might be vulnerable is Bryce Petty. But again, I think if he continues to progress, they're really not going to want to cut him loose. And I think there is a real possibility that they could keep 4 quarterbacks this season.
So, Manish, now that this whole thing is settled and resolved, Fitzpatrick is in place, do you think that the Jets legitimately are bound for the playoffs, or possibly? What do you think their end record would be as well?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think if you look at their schedule a year ago, they played the NFC East and the AFC South, which were the 2 easiest divisions in football. This year, they have a more daunting challenge against the AFC North and the NFC West, which are probably your 2 most difficult divisions in the NFL. And when you look at the first 6 weeks of this schedule, it's pretty brutal. Mm-hmm. You've got 5 teams that made the playoffs last year. It is extremely difficult out of the gate. On the other hand, they've got some really quality veteran players who I think can be it's a playoff roster. I guess it's the simplest way of putting it, whether it's with Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, now Matt Forte on the defensive side with that extremely deep and young offensive line that includes Wilkerson and Richardson and Leonard Williams. And on the back end with Darrelle Revis, who I don't think is the same player he used to be, but still a number 1 cornerback for a team in the NFL. I think they can make a legitimate playoff run if they can get out of those first 6 weeks, and let's say even 3-3. If they split those first 6 weeks, I think there's a legitimate chance that they can get a wild card spot. I'm still putting my money on New England to win the division, even though Brady's out for 4 games. I think they can win 1, maybe even 2 games in that first month, and if that's the case, when Brady comes back, I think they'll be off and running. So I think the Jets are going to contend for one of those 2 wild card spots. It's probably going to come down to the last couple of weeks of the season.
Manish Mehta of the New York Daily News with us right here on 104.5 The Team, talking Jets football. So this Ryan Fitzpatrick story has completely overshadowed what I have seen as my favorite story. Brandon Marshall's coming in lighter, leaner, and he's even talking smack to Antonio Brown.
Well, I will say this. The bet that you're referring to, if Brandon Marshall gets more touchdown passes than Antonio Brown, then Antonio Brown has to give Marshall his Rolls Royce. And if Brandon Marshall gets fewer touchdowns than Antonio Brown, then Marshall has to give him his Porsche. Now, I will say this. The Jets do have a licensing agreement with Porsche, so this is pretty clever and savvy product placement for Marshall. I don't even know if he owns this Porsche or if it's going to be loaned to him by the team, but it's Brandon Marshall really having a lot of fun, and it's something that you saw from him a year ago. He obviously left a pretty difficult situation in Chicago last year, had a tremendous season with Ryan Fitzpatrick in his first season with the Jets. He is 32 years old now. I keep losing track, but he lost about 20 pounds in the last 6 or so weeks. Todd Bowles wanted him at a specific weight, and even if you look at Brandon Marshall now, he's noticeably thinner than he was even at training camp last year when he was in pretty good shape. He's the kind of guy who I think defies what his age is. So the fact that he's on the wrong side of 30, to me, doesn't preclude him from having what I think will be an outstanding season again.
Follow him on Twitter at Mehta, NYDN, and New York Daily News. Again, sports reporters. Anybody who wants to talk Jets calls this man, and that's why we do it too. Thanks for your time today.
All right, guys. Take care.